I spent $50,000 on a family vacation, but my mother-in-law invited my wife's ex, so I canceled the payment and turned the trip into her worst nightmare. My name's Ben. I've been married to Lily for 5 years now. She's the love of my life, and our relationship has been great overall. However, there's always been one issue: her mom, Carol. My mother-in-law is one of those people who thinks she has the right to give opinions and make decisions about other people's lives. She never really liked me, but she tolerated me because she knew Lily loved me. "You're a good guy, Ben, but I'm not sure you're the right one for my Lily," Carol told me once, looking me up and down, as if I were something she bought on sale and regretted later. I never understood why she saw me like that, but eventually I figured it out. It wasn't me. It was Ryan. Ryan was Lily's college boyfriend. He was tall, had black hair, and a charming smile. The type of guy who knows how to win people over while stabbing you in the back. They were together for 3 years, from when she was 19 to 22. He cheated on her with several girls, classmates, friends, anyone, and manipulated her into thinking she was the problem. When they broke up, Lily cried for months, according to her brother, Noah. But when I met her, she had already moved on. She told me Ryan was a mistake from her past, and I believed her. Carol, on the other hand, never let go of that relationship. For her, Ryan was the dream son-in-law, the prince she lost. So polite, so handsome, such a bright future, she would say every chance she got. At family dinners, she would bring him up like some kind of trophy. Remember when Ryan took us to that fancy restaurant on Christmas Eve? She'd show pictures of them together, laughing at a table or dancing at a party. Even at our wedding, while I was standing next to Lily in my new suit, Carol sighed and said, "Ryan always looked so good in the family photos." I swallowed hard, squeezed Lily's hand, and pretended not to hear. For 5 years, I tolerated her comments. I kept telling myself it didn't matter because Lily had chosen me. Eventually, I thought, Carol would get tired of her obsession with Ryan. I was wrong. Last year, after months of working double shifts at the construction company where I'm a supervisor, I saved up $50,000 for a family vacation. I wanted to give Lily a break. She's an elementary school teacher, and last year had been tough. Difficult kids, demanding parents, late nights preparing lessons. I would see her come home exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and a forced smile. "We needed something special," I told her one night. She nodded, resting her head on my shoulder. For weeks, I searched for the perfect place and found a luxurious resort on a private island with white sandy beaches and crystal clear waters where you could see fish swimming by the shore. The rooms had private balconies and massive beds, and there was a beachfront restaurant with food that smelled like paradise. It was all-inclusive: flights, accommodations, meals, drinks, excursions. I booked it all in my name because I wanted it to be my gift to her. I invited her family, her brother Noah, her father, Frank, an aunt of Lily's, and even though I didn't want to invite Carol, I figured it would be a way to bring us together. I planned every detail. A full week from the 10th to the 17th of August, with activities like kayaking, boat rides, and themed nights. I spent way more than I had ever saved up in my life, but it would be worth it to see Lily happy. When I told her, it was like I had given her the world. "Ben, this is incredible!" she screamed, jumping into my arms with tears in her eyes. "We've never done something like this." I hugged her tightly, feeling her warmth against my chest. For a moment, everything was perfect. I made the reservations, confirmed the flights, and everything was set. 3 days before the trip, Lily told me that her mom had made a small change to the guest list. I thought she had invited a friend or another relative. I never imagined what she had actually done. The day of the flight, when we arrived at the airport, I was greeted by a sight that made my blood run cold. Ryan, my wife's ex. There he was, smiling at me like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Hey, good to see you," he said with a cocky grin, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. I stared at him, confused and angry. What the hell was he doing here? I turned to look at Lily, hoping she would be just as confused, but her expression said it all. She didn't know what was going on either. "Mom, what's going on?" Lily asked her mom, Carol, who was standing there with a pleased smile. "Oh, sweetheart," Carol said casually. "Ryan had some time off, and I thought it would be nice if he joined us. He's always been part of the family." My blood was boiling, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Who the hell authorized this?" I asked, my voice low but filled with anger. Carol, ever the calm one, shrugged nonchalantly. "Well, the airline allows name changes on tickets. I just had to make a few adjustments," she said, as if it was no big deal. She had swapped out the ticket for Lily's aunt and given it to Ryan. I could feel the heat rising inside me. Lily and I were both stunned, but at that point we were already at the airport, bags packed, and canceling everything would have cost a fortune. So I said nothing. I took a deep breath and decided that if Carol wanted to turn this into a nightmare, I was going to make sure it was one for her. We boarded the plane in a row of 4. Me by the window, Lily beside me, Ryan next to her, and Carol in the aisle seat. As soon as we took off, Ryan started talking. Lily, remember that time we flew to Cancun in our 2nd year? We laughed so much with that weird pilot, he said, laughing as if it were the funniest story in the world. Lily gave a weak smile. Yeah, that was a while ago, she responded. She didn't cut him off, though, and that's when I realized it wasn't going to stop. Carol leaned forward from her seat. Oh, those were such good times. You two always had the best stories, she said, her voice full of nostalgia. I tried to focus on the clouds outside the window, but every word Ryan said felt like it was piercing my ears. He was talking as if I didn't even exist, bringing up trips, parties, and moments I hadn't shared with Lily. She responded with short phrases, but that didn't stop him. At one point, Lily squeezed my hand and whispered, "Just ignore him, please." I tried, but it was hard. We arrived at the resort in the late afternoon, and the place was even more beautiful than I'd imagined. Tall palm trees swayed in the breeze, the turquoise ocean sparkled under the sun, and the lobby was open and welcoming, filled with flowers and staff offering cold towels and piña coladas. For a moment, I forgot my frustration and took a deep breath, enjoying the salty air. Lily and I went to our suite, a huge room with a king-sized bed, a jacuzzi in the bathroom, and a balcony with 2 hammocks and an ocean view. This is perfect, Lily said, wrapping her arms around me. Thank you, Ben. Everything's perfect. I kissed her forehead and thought maybe I could tolerate Ryan and Carol for the week if we could have moments like this. We had dinner that night in an open-air restaurant, with tables right on the sand, string lights hanging from the trees, and the sound of the waves crashing in the background. They served fresh fish with mango sauce, coconut rice, and a dessert flan that practically melted in your mouth. I was enjoying my first cold beer when Carol pulled out her phone. "Lily, come on, let's take a family picture," she said, getting up. She started arranging everyone like she was directing a movie. "Lily, stand here with Noah. Now, with your dad. Oh, Ryan, come stand next to Lily, just like old times." Ryan obeyed, smiling, and put his arm around Lily. His hand rested on her waist, and she didn't pull away. I tried to join in, but Carol cut me off. "Alex, can you take the picture? It needs to be perfect," she said, passing me her phone. I stood there, feeling like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I watched as Ryan pressed his body against my wife, and she smiled for the camera. After the photo, Ryan stayed close to her, offering her a bite of his flan with his fork. "Try this. You're going to love it," he said, grinning. Lily laughed. "You've always been good at picking desserts," she replied, and he winked at her. Carol clapped her hands like it was the most adorable thing in the world. I ordered another beer and stared out at the sea, counting to 10 in my head, trying not to explode. Later, as we were heading back to the room, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Lily, I don't like how your mom is excluding me from everything," I said as she took off her shoes. She sighed, looking tired. "It's not that big of a deal. She's just excited that Ryan's here. Don't take it personally," I snapped. "Take it personally?" I raised my voice. "I'm your husband, Lily. This is our trip, not theirs." She looked at me, her face softening. "I know, and I love you. That's why I'm trying to relax. Please, just relax," she said, walking over to hug me. She kissed me gently on the lips, and for a moment, I almost believed her. But something in her eyes told me that the situation wasn't going to get any better. The next day, I planned a kayaking trip to try to keep us busy and away from the drama. We woke up early and had croissants and orange juice for breakfast at the resort's dining area, and then a van took us to the starting point. The river was stunning. The water was turquoise, surrounded by mangroves, and white birds flew overhead. The sun was shining, but it wasn't too hot. Lily and I shared a kayak, and I paddled behind her as she led the way. She wore a straw hat to protect herself from the sun, and I had the easy job in the back, guiding us down the river. "Faster, Ben," she yelled, laughing as I splashed water at her. For a while, everything felt perfect. But then I heard Ryan and Carol coming up behind us in another kayak. "Lily, remember when we paddled on the University Lake?" Ryan shouted. His voice cut through the air. "You were terrible at it, remember?" Lily turned and smiled. "You were the one who couldn't paddle," she yelled back. They laughed like they shared some secret, while Noah and Frank were in another kayak, talking about something unrelated. But I couldn't stop hearing every laugh, every giggle that Lily shared with Ryan. It felt like a punch to the gut. When we reached the small beach at the end of the river, the scene was like something out of a postcard. Fine sand, a few scattered palm trees, and a table set up with fresh juices and fruits the guides had prepared for us. I sat with Lily in the shade, handing her a slice of pineapple, trying to relax. "You okay?" she asked, gently touching my arm. "Yeah," I lied, forcing a smile. "I just want you to enjoy this." But just as I started to feel like maybe things weren't so bad, Carol pulled out her camera again. "Lily, Ryan, come here. Let's take a picture by the water. Pablo, get over here too." Ryan stepped in next to Lily, his body pressed against hers, their shoulders almost touching. She didn't move away, and it was like a slap to my face. I could feel the frustration building up inside me, but I tried to stay calm. "Alex, can you take the picture?" Carol asked, cutting me off before I could do anything. I walked over to where she was standing, staring at them as they posed for the photo. Ryan had his hand on Lily's back, and she was smiling as if nothing was wrong. I felt my heart pounding in my chest. Lily's voice broke through the tension. "Alex, can you grab my hat?" "I left it in the kayak," she said casually. The words hit me like a punch. I nodded, trying to swallow the hurt. I walked slowly to the kayak, my feet sinking into the warm sand with each step. By the time I got back, the photo was already taken, and there they were, Ryan with his hand on Lily's back, and her smiling like nothing had happened. It stung like nothing else. We made our way back to the resort, and Ryan didn't leave Lily's side for the rest of the day. They were inseparable. He sat next to her by the pool, showing her photos and videos on his phone, and they laughed together, oblivious to me. Carol watched them with a proud smile, and I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't stand the sight of it. That night, I was hoping we would finally get some peace and be alone, but Ryan didn't go to dinner. Apparently, he was feeling sick, so I thought for a moment that I would have Lily to myself. We had a quiet dinner by the beach. No interruptions, no ex-boyfriends, just us. Afterward, Lily suggested a walk on the beach. "I just want some time alone," she said, looking at me with soft eyes. "I need to clear my head." I stood up, ready to join her, but she put her hand on my arm, avoiding my gaze. "It's okay. I just want some time alone, Ben." Her voice trembled, and I knew she was lying. I didn't argue. I nodded and watched her walk off into the shadows, disappearing between the palm trees. Something in my gut told me I needed to follow her. My heart was racing as I silently moved through the dark, trying to keep my distance. I knew I wasn't being fair to her, but I couldn't help it. Then I saw them. There they were, in the shadows, far from the lights of the resort. Lily and Ryan were kissing. It wasn't a quick kiss. It wasn't a mistake. It was deep, passionate. His hands were on her waist, pulling her closer, and hers were tangled in his hair, clutching his neck as if they were the only two people on earth. I stood there frozen, my body shaking. My mind was a blur, and I didn't know what to do. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, but I didn't move. I just watched as they continued to kiss, unaware of my presence. For a moment, I wanted to run over there, scream at them, beat Ryan into the ground. But I didn't. I stayed hidden, feeling the weight of betrayal crushing me. My legs felt weak, and I had to fight to keep myself from collapsing. I turned and walked back to the suite without a word, my heart breaking with each step. When Lily came back to the room a couple of hours later, I pretended to be asleep. She climbed into bed beside me, her breathing soft and steady. I lay there, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing the sound of the ocean crashing against the shore. The images of her with Ryan played over and over in my mind, like a twisted movie I couldn't escape. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, the sun streamed through the balcony doors, and I felt like a shell of the person I used to be. I looked over at Lily, still asleep beside me, her hair spread out on the pillow, looking so peaceful. I got up quietly, slipped on a t-shirt and shorts, and walked out of the room. I needed to get some air. I went to the resort's cafe for breakfast, trying to act normal. I ordered croissants, orange juice, and coffee, forcing a smile when I saw Lily from across the room. She smiled back, but I could tell she was confused. I returned the smile, but inside I felt like screaming. Later that afternoon, as we prepared to fly back home, I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. I had tried to keep it together for the entire trip, but I knew deep down it was all falling apart. I had spent $50,000 on this vacation, and it had turned into a nightmare. But the worst part was that the nightmare wasn't just the trip. It was my marriage. It was Lily. When we got to the airport, everything seemed to go wrong. Carol, Lily, and Ryan were all trying to act like nothing had happened, but I could see the tension between us. I walked up to the reception desk and asked to make an adjustment to the payment. The manager, a short guy with a mustache, looked up at me curiously. "I paid half up front, but I'd like the rest to be charged to Lily and Carol," I said, my voice steady but filled with resentment. The manager raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Understood, sir. We'll need their approval for the payment." I nodded, feeling my heart racing. I didn't care what they thought anymore. I just wanted to get this over with. Minutes later, Lily and Carol appeared, both looking confused. "What's going on, Ben?" Lily asked, her frown deepening. Carol stood behind her, arms crossed. The manager spoke up. "Ladies, Mr. Ben has requested that the remaining balance of the trip be charged to your cards." Carol's face turned bright red. "What is this? What are you talking about?" she demanded, raising her voice. Lily took a step forward, reaching out to touch my arm. "Ben, what's going on?" I jerked away from her. "Don't touch me," I said, looking her in the eyes. "I saw you last night, Lily. On the beach, kissing Ryan. Don't try to deny it." Her face went pale. "Alex, no, wait. I didn't want to hear it. It's over," I said, cutting her off. "I'm done." The manager cleared his throat awkwardly, but I didn't care. "Can I help you, sir?" he asked again. Lily stood there, stunned, her mouth hanging open as if she couldn't comprehend what I was saying. Her eyes welled up with tears, and she took a step back, like she couldn't quite believe it. "Alex, please." "Let me explain," she started, but I was done listening. I'd already seen everything I needed to see. There was nothing left to explain. "I don't want to hear it," I said, my voice as cold as ice. "I saw you with him, Lily. I saw the way you kissed him. It's over." Carol, standing behind Lily, opened her mouth to shout something, but I cut her off, my anger bubbling over. "Save it, Carol. You've been pushing me out of this relationship since the day I met you. You never liked me, and you never wanted me with your daughter. Well, congratulations, you've succeeded." I turned my back on them and walked away toward the exit. I could hear Carol trying to say something, but it didn't matter. Nothing they said would make a difference now. I made my way to the reception desk where I had the manager charge the remainder of the payment to Lily and Carol's cards, leaving them no option but to deal with the consequences of their actions. I didn't care what they had to say anymore. They could argue, beg, or plead all they wanted. I had made up my mind. The manager processed the payment, and I watched as Carol's face grew redder and redder. She was fuming, but I didn't care. I didn't owe her anything, not anymore. As I waited for the payment to be finalized, I glanced over at Lily, who was now standing off to the side, trying to calm herself down. She was visibly shaken, but I could see the guilt in her eyes. She was the one who had broken us, not Ryan, not Carol, her. She chose him. She chose to betray me, and that was something I could never forgive. The manager handed me the receipt, and I nodded, turning to leave. I was done with all of them. There was no going back now. As I walked out of the resort, my mind was spinning with everything that had happened. My entire life, everything I had worked for, felt like it was crumbling around me. I had spent $50,000 to give us a perfect vacation, to give Lily a break from her stressful life, and in return, she betrayed me with the one person I feared most, her ex. It was like a punch to the gut. I was angry, hurt, and heartbroken all at once. But as I walked through the resort's front doors, I realized something. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I wasn't going to let them win. I had put everything I had into making this vacation special for us, and they had ruined it. But I still had my dignity. I still had my pride. I wasn't going to let them take that from me. I left the resort and took a taxi to the airport. I felt numb, like I was walking through a fog. The anger and the betrayal were still there, but they were starting to fade into something else. I didn't know what yet, but I knew it wasn't going to be easy to move on from this. At the airport, I made sure to check in for my flight, keeping my distance from the chaos that was unfolding behind me. I could hear Carol yelling at the receptionist, demanding to speak to a manager, but I didn't care. I didn't want to be part of their mess anymore. I boarded the plane, and as I settled into my seat, I looked out the window. The sky was clear, the sun was shining, and I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I was leaving that nightmare behind. As the plane took off, I let out a deep breath and stared out at the clouds. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew I was done with Lily and her family. They had caused me enough pain, enough heartache. I was ready to start over, even if it meant doing it alone. When the plane landed, I didn't look back. I didn't want to. I had a new chapter ahead of me, one where I could rebuild my life, my happiness, and my peace. I wasn't going to let them define me anymore. I checked into a new apartment, a small place that was quiet and peaceful. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I sold everything that reminded me of Lily, everything that tied me to that life. I didn't need any of it anymore. I didn't need her. The first few months were tough. I won't lie. There were nights when I couldn't sleep, when the pain and anger would hit me all over again. But the silence, the peace, it was what I needed. I focused on work, on rebuilding my life. Slowly, I started to feel like myself again. As the weeks passed, I stopped thinking about Lily. I stopped thinking about Carol and Ryan and all the drama they brought into my life. I focused on the things that mattered. I found a new routine, made new friends, and learned to enjoy my own company. I didn't need them. I didn't need anyone who didn't respect me. And in time, I knew I would find my way back to happiness. Life started to settle into a new rhythm, and I realized that while the pain from everything that had happened was still there, it wasn't as heavy anymore. Each day, the weight on my shoulders grew a little lighter. I was learning to live without Lily, without all the drama her family brought into my life. And as time passed, I found more peace than I had ever known. I started working out more, going to the gym in the mornings before heading to the office. It felt good to take care of myself again, to feel strong both physically and mentally. The routine gave me a sense of control, something I hadn't had in a long time. I spent my weekends exploring the city, trying new restaurants, and just enjoying my own company. I found small joys in everyday life, things I had ignored when I was tangled up in the mess with Lily and her family. And then, just when I thought I had finally moved on, I got a message. It was from Lily. I stared at my phone for a few moments, not sure what to do. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to block her number and move on with my life without any more interruptions. But another part of me felt this sick curiosity, like I needed to hear what she had to say. The message was simple. Alex, I need to talk. Can we meet? My first instinct was to delete it, to forget about everything, but I couldn't. Part of me still cared about her. No matter how much she had hurt me, a part of me still missed her. So I decided to meet her. I wanted closure. I wanted to hear her side of things, even if I had already made up my mind about everything. It wasn't about fixing things. It was about understanding. I wasn't going to let her back into my life, but I needed to hear her out. We agreed to meet at a cafe downtown, the same place we had gone to on our first date. It felt strange to be there again, knowing how much had changed. I arrived early, sitting at a corner table and ordering a coffee, trying to calm my nerves. Part of me felt like I was making a mistake, but I knew this was something I had to do. When she walked in, I could immediately tell that she had changed. She looked different, not just in her appearance, but in her energy. There was a sadness in her eyes, a weight on her shoulders that hadn't been there before. She was still beautiful, but there was something about her that felt off, like she had lost something important. She spotted me from across the room and made her way over to the table. As she sat down, I could feel the tension between us. It wasn't the same as it used to be, when everything was easy and comfortable. Now it felt strained, like we were both trying to figure out where we stood. Alex, I don't know where to start, she said, her voice quiet and hesitant. I took a deep breath and looked at her, trying to steady myself. You don't have to say anything, Lily. I'm not here to fight. I just want to know why. She hesitated, then nodded, like she had been expecting that question all along. I don't know what happened. I don't know why I let it get that far. It was a huge mistake, and I regret it every single day. I stayed silent, not wanting to interrupt her, but the words she was saying felt hollow. She was saying the right things, but I wasn't sure if she truly understood what she had done. I was caught up in everything, Alex, she continued, her eyes filling with tears. I was confused. I never stopped loving you, but when Ryan came back into my life, it just stirred up old feelings, and I couldn't control myself. It's no excuse for what I did, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I looked at her, my heart aching as I listened to her words. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to forgive her and move on, to go back to the way things were. But the other part, the part that had been hurt so deeply, knew that I couldn't. You hurt me, Lily, I said, my voice tight. You hurt me in a way I can't just forget. And it wasn't just Ryan. It was everything. It was your mom, your family, all of it. I felt like I was never enough for you, like I was always just in the way. She reached across the table, her hand trembling as she tried to touch mine. I pulled my hand away instinctively, not wanting her to feel like she still had any control over me. I never meant for you to feel that way, she whispered. I never wanted you to feel like you were second place. You were always my choice, Alex. You always were. But I made a huge mistake, and I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know how sorry I am. I sat back in my chair, feeling the weight of her words sink in. It was a lot to process. A part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her that it was too late, that I was done, but another part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her it would all be okay. But I couldn't do that anymore. I'm not the guy you need, Lily, I said softly. I'm not the guy you wanted. You had your chance, and you chose him, and I can't live with that. The tears started to fall from her eyes, and she wiped them away quickly. I know, I've lost you, haven't I? I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure what to say. The truth was, yes, she had lost me. But it wasn't just because of Ryan. It was because of everything. The betrayal, the constant comparisons to him, the way her family treated me. It was all too much. "I think we both need to move on, Lily," I said, my voice steady but filled with pain. "This isn't healthy for either of us. We've both changed too much." She nodded, and for a moment we just sat there in silence. Two people who once loved each other but now found themselves as strangers. "I'll always care about you, Alex," she said quietly. "You'll always have a piece of my heart." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just nodded. I stood up from the table and Lily followed suit. We shared one last look, and then I turned to walk away. I knew that meeting had been necessary. I needed to hear her words, to get that closure. But I also knew that it was over. I had to let go. There was no going back. I walked out of the cafe and into my new life, one that didn't include Lily, Ryan, or Carol. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was the right thing to do. I wasn't going to let the past define me. I was going to keep moving forward no matter how hard it was. I walked out of that cafe with a feeling of finality, but also a sense of liberation. The hardest part was over. I had confronted my past, faced the person who had betrayed me, and walked away. I felt empty, but also oddly free. The weight that had been on my chest for months, maybe even years, was starting to lift. I didn't look back. I knew that if I kept looking back, I would never truly move on. I had already spent too much time, too many nights, agonizing over what went wrong, replaying everything in my head. It was time to stop. I had to focus on myself, on rebuilding my life. That's what I did when I got home. I threw myself into my work, into my own healing. The days blurred together. At first, the silence was unbearable, and the loneliness crept in at night when I found myself staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had made the right choice. But then something shifted. I started to enjoy the peace. I started to enjoy being alone, and I realized I wasn't as lonely as I had once thought. I started taking care of myself in ways I hadn't before. I went to therapy, I worked on my mental health, and I set new goals for myself. The physical and emotional pain faded, slowly but surely, and it felt good. A few months later, I met someone new. Her name was Emma. We met through a mutual friend at a small gathering, and at first, I didn't think much of it. I wasn't ready to open up to anyone, let alone date again. But something about her felt different. She was kind, compassionate, and had a quiet strength about her. We talked for hours that night, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could be myself again. We started seeing each other more often, and little by little, I realized I wasn't just putting up walls around my heart anymore. I was opening up. I was learning to trust again, to love again. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But with Emma, I felt safe. I felt like I could start fresh. I took things slow, because I had learned that rushing into anything was never the answer. I had to heal, and I had to find who I was again. But Emma gave me the space I needed. She never pushed me, and for that, I was grateful. With time, I let myself believe in love again. Real love. Not the toxic kind that I had with Lily. Not the kind filled with jealousy, manipulation, and betrayal. I realized that love should make you feel free, not trapped. And with Emma, I felt free. I felt like I could breathe again. We took a trip together, just the two of us, to a small beach town. It wasn't the luxurious resort I had booked for Lily, but it was perfect in its simplicity. We spent our days walking along the beach, talking about everything and nothing. We ate at little cafes and watched sunsets together. It wasn't extravagant, but it was genuine. It was real. I realized, sitting on that beach with Emma, that I had come full circle. I had gone through the pain, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and come out the other side stronger. I didn't need Lily or anyone else to complete me. I was whole on my own. And now I had someone who valued me for who I truly was. I also realized that no matter how much I had loved Lily or how much I had tried to make things work, some relationships just weren't meant to last. People change. Sometimes they grow apart. And sometimes they hurt each other in ways that can't be undone. I had loved her, but now it was time to let go completely. And I had. After that trip, Emma and I decided to take things to the next level. We moved in together a few months later. It felt natural, like we were building something real. It was different from the rush I had felt with Lily. With Emma, I didn't need to rush. We were building something solid, something that would last. In the end, I realized that everything I had gone through, the pain, the betrayal, the heartbreak, had been necessary. It had shaped me into the person I was becoming. It had taught me what I truly needed in a partner, and more importantly, what I deserved. I was no longer the person who would settle for being second choice. I was no longer the person who would let someone walk all over me. I had learned my worth, and I wasn't going to compromise it for anyone. And so, life continued. I focused on my career, my personal growth, and my relationship with Emma. There were still moments of doubt, moments when I wondered if I had made the right decisions. But I knew deep down that I was on the right path. I was finally in control of my life, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. As for Lily, I wished her well. She would always have a place in my memories, but I had made my peace. I had moved on, and I had built a better life for myself. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. And in that, I found my freedom. So here I am, standing in a place of strength, looking forward to the future with hope. The past will always be a part of me, but it doesn't define who I am today. I've learned that life has a way of bringing us exactly what we need, even if it's not always what we expect. And for the first time in a long time, I feel at peace.